So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our panel. We've got three fantastic members who work on policy all across the state. We've got Ed Yohnka from the ACLU. He is the spokesperson for the ACLU, Illinois. We've also got Fred Tsao from the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. He's the Senior Policy Counsel. And we've got Cate Caldwell. She is with the Illinois Environmental Council. So these organizations are doing great work all across the state, and we're going to speak about what their priorities are over the next 2 years, 2025 and 2026, and how all of our groups across the state can work along with them. So we're going to start things off with Fred. It's a very timely presentation that Fred's going to give, especially with everything that we've seen from the administration, especially over the last 2 days. I'm sure you all have seen the birthright citizenship decision and some of the other decisions that have come down from the Supreme Court. So we're very interested in just hearing about what the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights is working on and how we can partner with them. Fred?
Okay. Thank you, Patrick. Hello, everyone. All right. I don't know why I'm up here, because there's absolutely nothing going on in immigration these days. I'm just lounging around my office, watching cat videos and eating chocolate. Nothing's going on. No, seriously, it seems like we're getting punched in the face on a weekly, if not daily basis. So I wanted to spend a bit of time just gathering a lay of the land here. So I have a few slides. I'm not going to go into super depth about all of them, but I think this will give you some idea of what we're up against these days. So this first slide is a catalog of all of the different ways in which this regime is trying to, in the words of one commentator, illegalize people who are in the United States who may have some form of legal protection or status. So as you can see here, there are a number of people who were granted temporary protected status because it's too dangerous to deport them, and yet this administration wants to do that. In at least one case for Venezuela, the Supreme Court stepped in and is allowing the administration to do this. Terminating temporary protected status is going to affect about 350 to 400,000 people across the country. Also, there were hundreds of thousands of people who were allowed to come to the United States under a variety of circumstances. Some of them were screened outside the United States and then allowed in to pursue asylum cases. Many of these people are also losing their parole, losing their work permits, and losing their protection, and are now vulnerable to deportation. We've seen students, people here on student visas, and in some cases even green card holding student activists like Mahmoud Khalil, who are now being specifically targeted by this administration. And then to cap it all off, even many people who are US citizens under the 14th Amendment may, in the matter of a month or so, no longer be recognized as US citizens. Thank you, Amy Coney Barrett, and your 5 colleagues on the Supreme Court. So oddly enough, the one thing that we were most anticipating and most concerned about has not happened yet. That's DACA. DACA still exists. And so about 800,000 people who have DACA still have it, can still renew it, are still able to work. Unfortunately, new people who qualify are not able to access DACA, and we're actually just kind of waiting for the next shoe to drop here. So, but yeah, all told, over 1 million people who have some form of legal protection are now, before this administration, are now going to be vulnerable to deportation, on top of everybody else who was lacking protection. So, next slide here. We've also seen this administration try to cut corners and short circuit of ordinary legal procedures. So one really important thing that's happened is what's called expedited removal, which had only been used at the border and only for people who were here for less than 2 weeks. Now this extends all across the country to anybody who can't show that they've been here for more than 2 years after entering the country without authorization. So many of the arrests that we're seeing at courthouses or at ICE check-ins, this is expedited removal. These folks are being denied the opportunity to go to court and make their case, unless they scream bloody murder that they're going to get persecuted in their home country. We're also seeing, in the case of the students, this rationalization that somehow the presence of these students interferes with our foreign policy. Thank you, Marco Rubio. We've seen the invocation of the Alien Enemies Act from 1798. None of us in this room were around back in 1798, but somehow
I was.
well, okay. I also remember when Ed had hair. So that I think is an indication of my age as well. This old law is being dusted off to purportedly to deport the worst of the worst, but of course, as we've seen in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, that's not the case. We're also seeing, these notices that Homeland Security is putting out, and ads on the radio and TV saying, "Hey, if you're not here legally, you ought to leave. And by the way, we will even pay for the privilege of your leaving. We'll pay your airfare, and at the end of it all, we'll cough up $1,000 stipend." So that's happening. Completely unprecedented. And the last thing, speaking of the Supreme Court, now, at least for now, it is legal for the United States to deport people to a third country, like El Salvador or South Sudan or Djibouti, with very limited opportunity to show that, hey, my life might be in danger if I get deported to South Sudan or Libya or El Salvador, but this is being allowed to happen. Next slide. Okay. This administration is also, also weaponizing the various measures by which it collects data. So, for instance, we now have a memorandum of understanding between ICE and the IRS, where ICE can ask the IRS to confirm someone's address based on their tax returns. So that's really going to encourage people to file their tax returns, right? Similarly, we're seeing now, there have now been reports of, Homeland Security trying to glom onto information that states turn over to the federal government regarding Medicaid enrollment. That's going to encourage people to sign up for medical assistance, right? And then, we're also seeing recent reports of ICE submitting FOIA requests to the Chicago Police Department, or trying to get information about our people who applied for municipal IDs in Chicago, and also trying to get access to Illinois State Police gang databases in order to just hoover up all this information to identify people for deportation. And on top of all this, people are being asked to comply with this registration requirement, basically to report themselves to the federal government under threat of criminal penalties. So again, these are the lengths that this administration is going to. Next slide. Okay. The last thing I want to cover here, this last bucket, is obviously on top of all this, we're seeing just a real intensification of enforcement activity. We've seen concentrated operations in specific areas. Back in January, even before the inauguration, we saw a massive concentration of ICE activity in the Chicago area. A few weekends ago, we saw a massive concentration in Los Angeles and raids at car washes and day labor sites and fields and lots of other places where ICE may be able to pick up undocumented people. We've seen, any number of other federal agents get dragooned into immigration enforcement: DEA, ATF, the Marshal Service, Bureau of Prisons, IRS investigators, and now, now as we saw in LA, the deployment of the nationalization and deployment of the National Guard and even the Marines in LA, supposedly to keep the peace. I understand those Guard troops and Marines are not doing much of anything because LA was already kind of peaceful, and so their presence is really superfluous. We've seen ICE enter into a whole spate of agreements with local and state police departments in other states, to again, be a force multiplier in their deportation efforts. I should add here, that crap is barred in Illinois. Thanks to a law that we passed back in 2019. So we're not going to see that. Unfortunately, what we may still see is raids at so-called sensitive locations: churches, schools, work sites, courthouses. The previous guardrails against those kinds of operations have since been removed. In fact, it was removed on, maybe not on day one, but on day two. So all of those locations are now fair game. And then, I mentioned earlier, there are now ICE arrests at courthouses. Then people are now being sent short notice alerts saying, hey, show up at this location, on this day or this day, and if you don't, you're violating the terms of your supervision or your monitoring. And when people show up, they get arrested. So that's been happening here in Chicago. That's that's been keeping us up late at night over the past few weeks or so. And the final thing to note here is that the proliferation of masking and other kinds of really rough tactics. People being tackled, people being roughed to the ground, windshields being broken when people are stopped in their cars, and then of course what seems to be a now uniform policy that ICE agents are going to be masked and camouflaged, which of course denies any kind of accountability for any of this behavior. So, how are we responding to all of this? Which I think is what Patrick wanted me to focus on in the first place. Next slide here. Okay, so this is what we're doing. First off, we have been doing lots and lots of Know Your Rights education. Many of you probably were on the webinar that we organized back in, what was it, March? Oh my God, it was that long ago. Okay, yeah, 1,000 people, participated in that webinar, and we've been holding webinars and presentations and trainings, community events, trying to get the word out regarding what rights people still have under the U.S. Constitution, particularly when they're confronted with an ICE agent at their door or in their car or in a public space or at their work sites, but then also informing people how to prepare in the event that, how to prepare for the possibility that they could face arrest, and also what they can do, what they can do if in the event that they are arrested. So we've also been developing a really strong network, our family support network, that has a hotline. Unfortunately, I didn't bring cards or placards with the hotline number, 855-435-7693. I should have put it on the slide as well, 855-435-7693. And I'll repeat it as many times as necessary. So this is a live answered hotline where that's 855-435-7693. Okay. One more time.
Slower.
855-435-7693. Okay. I'll say it as many times as necessary. So this is a hotline that's staffed, that's now staffed and live answered most hours of the day. Maybe not at 2 in the morning, but most hours of the day. It's also staffed in 9 languages, and this connects people up with operators who can relay information about ICE sightings, ICE raids as they're happening, but also connect people with legal resources, with community services, other kinds of benefits that may be available to them. And as I mentioned, one of the key pieces added onto this is our rapid response network. We have 24 rapid response teams throughout the state, including one here in Champaign, that when informed by information from the hotline or other sources, we can go out, investigate, verify that something happened, speak with witnesses, try to document as best as we can, and also work with people, family members and others who are left behind, and try to connect them up with supportive services. So that is also in place now. I would also note too that part of our response is also trying to fight off bad legislation. We're fairly fortunate here in Illinois that we have other ways of bottling up unfriendly legislation. Unfortunately, that's not always the case, particularly on the federal level. And I do want to take a minute to mention the big beautiful bill, the one big beautiful bill. Which we call the big bullshit bill. That is now working its way through Congress. In fact, the Senate might start its vote-a-rama as early as this afternoon. Congress is complicit in all of this. And in fact, not only is it complicit, it wants to provide massive amounts of additional funding for all this crap, and to the tune of $126 billion over the next several years, including $45 billion just for immigration detention. Jailing people, tearing them away from their communities, and keeping them in really horrible conditions in mostly private prisons. These kinds of really inhumane warehouses that are now proliferating. So I think we're fortunate in that Senator Durbin and Senator Duckworth are almost certainly going to oppose this. But even if the Senate passes this, the bill is going to need to go back to the House for concurrence. So this is going to be our opportunity to put in calls, put in messages to our House members to say, don't vote for this thing. I think most members of the Illinois delegation are going to be good, but I think I heard mentioned earlier about the 3 outliers, throughout the state, who I'd like to think are not complete lost causes, though I suspect at least one of them. Well, at least one of them is, and probably the other 2 are as well. Let's see. 2 other things to note here. One is congressional oversight. So even though the Democrats are in the minority in both chambers, they do have oversight authority. I love seeing, watching videos of Congresswoman Delia Ramirez just just nailing Kristi Noem, either in the hallways of the House office buildings or in congressional hearings. So she's going to be playing a role. Chuy Garcia is going to be playing a role. Raja Krishnamurti is going to be playing a role. They're all on relevant communities with respect to immigration operations. We need to make sure that, as is Senator Durbin and Senator Duckworth. So we need to make sure that they are doing their job as well. And then the last thing I'm going to mention is local and state level advocacy. We can do our part to try to pass local policies and state policies. We already have a very strong set of state laws in place, including the Trust Act, the Illinois Forward Act. We just this past spring, we passed a Safe Schools bill that should restrict ICE raids at schools. When Governor Pritzker signs this, and I'm saying when, not if, schools will need to craft policies on how they're going to respond if ICE shows up at their doors. So that's going to involve lots of local advocacy among schools and school districts. Keep an eye out for that. And there may be other things that we may be able to do on the state level that are going to be much more protective. So looking forward to working with all of you on getting that done. And
Thank you, Fred. You're doing fantastic work at the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. We'll definitely be in touch with how all of our groups, we've got group leaders from all across the state, how we can partner with you on many of these initiatives. So next, I would like to introduce Cate Caldwell from the Illinois Environmental Council. Cate is the Executive Policy Director. Cate, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at the Illinois Environmental Council.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Can you all hear me okay at this level? Okay. Well, I am Cate Caldwell. I am a Senior Policy Manager at the Illinois Environmental Council, also known as IEC. Since 1975, we are basically the heart, the backbone of advocating for environmental policy across the state. Specifically, my role, I manage our state to federal partnerships. This is something that we are building out that's kind of new in this phase. So I am coming in with the responsibility of holding our state lawmakers accountable at the state capitol in Springfield, but also making sure that we have great relationships with our congressional delegation as well. So a lot of our advocacy is stretched across 6 different issue areas. We work on transportation, we work on agriculture, conservation, zero waste, clean water, clean energy. But specifically, I kind of want to talk to you all about the work that we are doing to kind of, build up our federal defense. And so, like it was previously mentioned, also, I don't know if you all are watching, but Senate Republicans actually did overnight release a new version of the budget reconciliation text. They probably are voting right now as I am speaking, but they are expected to vote on that, and then it does have to go back to the House. It has to go through concurrence, but concurrence will probably look a little differently because everyone won't be in the room, all voices won't be heard. And that's something that I kind of want to touch on is right now we're in a state where we have no idea what's going on because we are out of those rooms, right? We are not being informed. We don't have, the educational part of, how these policies are affecting us, here on the ground and how these policies are affecting our state. And so part of what IEC does is we make sure that we can get in the room. Part of what I do with my work is making sure that I'm having those conversations with our congressionals and understanding what's at stake, but also letting them know that you are voting against not only a bill, but you are voting against policies that are affecting the very people that you represent. So this is no longer a black or white issue. This is no longer a Democratic or Republican issue. This is, you are going against the very people that put you in office to protect them. And so what we are seeing with this budget reconciliation bill, it's scary because the main people that we are seeing that are going against it, or the main people that we are seeing are going against the protections and the provisions that we need, they are the main ones that are kind of shooting themselves in the foot a little bit. Something else that I want to speak about is the power that we hold within the state. And I want to touch on that because we've seen how state policy can actually, give us power. Something that, IEC was a part of was CEJA, and that passed in 2021. And so I want to speak to that point because when the federal government is failing, this is the opportunity for the state of Illinois and for different states to step up. Are you going to sit aside? Are you going to, stay back and just, allow these things to happen? Or are you going to reorganize? Are you going to strategize? Are you going to coalition build? And are you going to then expand the current state policies that we currently have? I'm going to be honest with you. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the environmental space, it looks really bad, right? You have permitting processes. You have different streamlining things that, community voices are not being heard. I don't know about y'all, but it gets real hot in a suit in 100-degree weather. Climate change is very real. No one wants to sit and drink dirty water. No one wants to breathe, unclean air. But I say all of that to say, yes, the federal government is doing horrible things, right? But thankfully, we are in a space where we have a blue state, where we have lawmakers that we can actually have conversations with and say, hey, I understand that this administration is doing this. I understand that this administration is harming us in this way. However, can we look at the current laws and can we look at the current policies that we have at the state level and see how we can protect those from executive orders, see how we can expand those initiatives, right? Looking at, our legacy, looking at children. I mean, I'm probably younger than most of y'all in the room, but still, looking at, what we're leaving behind. How are we leaving our planet? How are we leaving our earth? So I don't want to harp too much on the negatives that, the federal government is doing because we recognize that, right? We are seeing the news, right? Every day I turn around, every morning I wake up, it's, something different that is hard for me to track. But the one thing that we can do is we can use our power and we can use our voice. We can community build, we can connect with each other, reach out to the Illinois Environmental Council. If there's something that's happening downstate, Central Illinois, Chicago, and you're like, hey, I don't have much faith left in the federal government, but I have faith in the people that are around me, and I care about my planet, I care about the environment, so I'm gonna reach out to you and let's see what we can do. Let's take advantage of what we can do. So let's connect with our local leaders, let's connect with our state leaders, right? It's gonna be a rough 4 years. I'm not telling you that it's about to be peaches and cream, because it's not, right? But I am saying is that sitting in this room, look to your left and look to your right, I guarantee you there's something that you can connect with one another that you're concerned about. So take that anger that you have, that frustration that you have, take this big bullshit of a bill and do something about it, right? Utilize your resources, utilize the people at this table, right? It's scary, it's a long road ahead of you, but I strongly believe if you are passionate about something, you have a purpose and use that purpose. And so I'm just gonna close with, there are a lot of federal policies that, will shape, the future, right? There are a lot of things that we feel like maybe can't be undone. There are a lot of, there's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, they're even trying to sell off our public lands. So I would say use this anger, fuel it to do something greater. Don't give up. Don't quit. This is what they want you to do, right? This is what politics is. They want you to feel like you're powerless. They want you to feel like, there's no hope left. They want you to, just stop calling. But no, continuously contact your lawmakers. Continuously contact your neighbors. You have to become your own scientist. Do it. If you have to go outside every day with the air monitor and track every day and every night, what's changing, do it. If you have to test your water, do it, right? And it's not easy, it's not, but this is the pivotal point. This is going to distinguish between who really cares about their environment, who really cares about their future, and who's just gonna sit aside. So with that being said, federal government, maybe it's not in the state that we want it to be. We don't know what the future is. We know that we're kind of on a downhill, but at the same time, we do have a state that we can trust, and we do have state lawmakers that we can believe in, and also at the local level. So it's about accountability, it's about coalition building, it's about bringing your community together, and actually being involved in the change that you truly want to see. So I know IEC is here as a resource, ACLU is here as a resource as well. Utilize your network, utilize your connections, and yeah, that's all I have, y'all. But it's rough, but we got this.
Thank you, Cate. And I know that there are cards going around. We're going to have a little time for Q&A for the panel as a whole. So if you do have a question and you didn't get a card already, raise your hand, and those cards are coming around the room for questions when we get to the Q&A period. I'd next like to introduce Ed Yohnka. Ed is the American Civil Liberties Union Illinois spokesperson. I'm going to let Ed speak a little bit about himself and the work at the ACLU.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. It's really a pleasure to be here this afternoon, and it's really great to be back in Champaign. Down? Okay. Not the first time. I was thinking as I was driving down this morning, I was in Champaign-Urbana in the fall of 1980. I am the oldest person up here. So, and I remember getting up and dragging myself to class on the morning after Ronald Reagan was elected president and thinking it was the end of the earth. Live long enough, you'll see everything. But what I say that in ways because I was really not prepared for that moment, but we were prepared for this one. They gave us the playbook in Project 2025. And last year, the ACLU, with our national office, with affiliates, with partners across the country, prepared for this moment and what we would face. And one of the things that we understood, one of the things that we knew, was that the authoritarian impulses that Donald Trump presented and demonstrated during his first term in office would be unchecked in this one. And I want to just digress for just a moment on that because I think there's an interesting thing that's happening across the country, and especially sort of in the media narrative around these authoritarian impulses, which is sort of three things, which is either one, acting as an authoritarian is simply portrayed as being strong. Or number two, you hear these excuses that, well, he doesn't really mean it. He's just playing at it like it's professional wrestling or reality television. And then the third thing you hear is, of course, that this is just the cover to his actions, which really are enriching himself and his family and his friends. And the corruption's right out there in front of us. But the truth is these authoritarian impulses are real, they are cruel, and they are visiting harm on millions of people across the country. And so we prepared in the time leading up to the election and leading up to the inauguration in thinking about how we would help arrest, stop, do harm reduction wherever we could. And the first thing, because we're the ACLU, is we developed legal strategies. So as of yesterday, I think I have this right now, we have filed 65 different legal actions in the last 5 months against the Trump administration and the actions they've taken since he's resumed office on January 1st of 2025. I actually did count it. I'll get to that. And in 38 of those instances, we have gotten some sort of preliminary or beginning relief from the court. So in more than half of the times that we have filed cases, we have gotten a court to agree that what the president has done and what his administration is doing is unlawful or unconstitutional. So as you know, yesterday the Supreme Court struck down or limited the ability of district courts to engage in nationwide injunctions. And the reason that I said 65 cases is because a couple of hours after that ruling came out, the ACLU, along with a number of partners, filed a nationwide class action lawsuit against the birthright citizenship change. The reality is that we are going to continue to fight, even if we have to work more strategically, even if we have to work harder at the cases that we do, even if they have to be larger, take longer, do more, look at whatever we can. We are ready and stand ready to fight in every single district across this country, if we have to resist this onslaught of cruelty against people. And, as you know, part of this is just targeted and aimed at people that Donald Trump just doesn't like and just doesn't recognize as being worth the value that he is. And I have to say that, when I say that, sometimes people will say, well, how can you really say that? And just think about it for a second. I mean, just think about this. We know Donald Trump believes in due process. Because he used a hell of a lot of it. He used a hell of a lot of it for himself. Imagine if he had been arrested after being called into an emergency court session the way Fred described that it is happening to immigrants today. So what we know is whether or not it's immigrants and newcomers, whether or not it's people that he thinks are less because of the color of their skin or their gender or their gender identity or their sexual orientation, or because, any of those reasons, we know that these are the people that he is going to visit this cruelty on. And we can stand in the breach and be there in this moment to be there on behalf of those folks in courts and to reduce this harm to the greatest degree we can. Here's the second part of the legal action I just want to mention, which is a little bit of a departure for the ACLU, but one that I'm really proud of over these last 5 months, is we've begun to really look at the way in which they're using funding and government revenue or government grants in order to change programs that they just disagree with. And I want to point to one area where we in Illinois have actually joined in a national lawsuit to stop the dismantling of the Head Start program across the country. Other than Social Security, Head Start may be the most successful government program in the history of the United States of America, and Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Donald Trump would take it away tomorrow because they think it's too woke. I don't know what woke is, but if woke is helping kids to read, I'm for it. But as we do these things, here's the second element of what we've been thinking about, and specifically thinking about with my colleagues in Illinois. As Fred mentioned, and frankly, in large measure on the immigration side, due to the work that Fred and ICIRR has done over the last years, we have great protections in place in Illinois around immigration, around the involvement of law enforcement in immigration enforcement, around detention policies, around other things. We have incredible protections for the LGBTQ community, including specific protections for transgender and non-binary folks and for gender-affirming care. And we have important protections around school curricula and around academic freedom in Illinois. We need to, A, look at those and figure out where we need to fill in the gaps. Fred mentioned one in the school policy this year where they did a good job of identifying one more step we need to take. We need to look at what else we need to do in Illinois and put those protections in place. But here's the second thing. We have to make sure that they're enforced all across Illinois. And that's where all of you come in. Because none of us up here can be everywhere. But you are. And we need to know what's happening on the ground in places across the country and what those violations, not just of constitutional policy, but of state policy looks like. Let me give you one example from the last couple weeks, and I don't know if there's anybody here from Jefferson County. Okay. I know where it is. Yeah. Last year, the sheriff of Jefferson County led an effort to raise funds to build, and I am not making this up, a 7-foot tall, more than 1-ton monument that had a Protestant version of the Ten Commandments on it, and he placed it in the lobby of the courthouse. And he did so, my favorite part about this, he did so because he believed, and he said this publicly, that Donald Trump would want that monument there. Donald Trump, famous follower of the Ten Commandments. Right. Thank you. I'm going to steal that line, by the way. But the other part of it is that he said to the people who helped fund it, he said, hey, you know what? If the end times comes, I'll help protect you. You can come in here in the courthouse with me. So 2 weeks ago, the ACLU, along with our national office and the Freedom from Religion Foundation, filed a lawsuit against the placement of this monument, which the county board had thought might be a problem in the library, so they just moved it out onto the lawn right where the people enter the courthouse. Last Monday night, the county board voted to remove the monument altogether after the lawsuit was filed. Given the diminution of local news across the state, it might have taken us 2 years to figure that out if a whole bunch of people in Jefferson County had reached out to us in the first instance. And so, that is a place not only of having these protections, but enforcing them where people at the local level can make a difference. I'm gonna stop in just a moment, but I want to say one last thing. There is now going to be enormous pressure on folks at the local level to curb or to change or to bend their policies to more align themselves with the Trump administration through funding. As we saw yesterday, apparently now the president selects the president of the University of Virginia. As we see this play out, we need to be affirmative in school boards, in library boards, in in the boards of community colleges to talk about the kind of educational policies, the kind of books and curricula, the kinds of things that we want. We don't have to wait for something to happen to go and use the public comment section in order to talk about the kinds of policies we want at that local level. We're always willing to help with people, with talking points, with information, with ways to think about and what that public comment would look like. But that is a place where, not reaching out to a United States senator, but literally someone who you see in the grocery store, it will make such an enormous difference. And I will close with this. I think the other thing that we can do is start thinking now about what we want as we build back from this. How can we be a beacon to the rest of the country and to others to think about the kind of state where we live in a pluralistic society where we respect the rights of everyone? That is our mission, not just fighting this, but thinking about where we go from here. And that is the work that you can do together, and we can all do together, and I'm really happy to be a part of. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. We're going to move on to questions from the audience. Can we have Rebecca, Jody, and Jermaine come to the microphone? You'll just want to make sure that it's on. You press the button there. You gotta hold it down.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so I would just like to know, Ed, I appreciate everyone. I just want to say we all appreciate everything you're doing. I want to say that first of all. A lot of us have been leading rallies. You know, my name is all over everything. I'm getting a little worried that bad things are going to happen to me.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I mean, can you just address that a little bit? I want to go sit down, but can you just address that?
Absolutely. I'd be lying if I said I didn't worry about the same thing. Your name's all over everything. There's video of me. Yeah. You know, the 2 points I would make about that. The first one is I worry about that. And I think it means that people are going to assess their own personal risk in different ways as to what it is they're willing to do. And I think we have to be patient with people as they're coming along in that process. I think if you're someone who is really out, I think things like knowing the contact information for whether it's the ACLU or whether it's another local legal organization or, you know, things like that is going to be, you know, really critically important. But I think the other element of this, and I'm glad you raised it in this way because I want to also turn it around. Because I think one of the things that we've seen too much of is this conversation about, oh, let's not talk about this issue because then, you know, it'll be okay. Fred will remember early on after Trump was elected, a Chicago City Council person who said, well, let's just cooperate on the really bad people because then they won't do any of the really tough raids in Chicago. Because I don't know where you grew up, but if you gave the bully your lunch money on Monday, they always skipped you on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. But the second element of that is I think it really does demonstrate that we're all in this together. We're all at risk. Your name may be on things. My name, I think, would probably be on a list. But the truth is we're all at risk sooner or later. Because the thing is either you comply or you're an enemy. And so I choose not to comply. And, you know, I think that people will make different choices, but I think that's the way I think about it.
I would add one piece to Ed's very eloquent response of that and take it a step further, which is that if any of us get into trouble, I would hope we would all rally together to. And we saw this with Mahmoud Khalil. We saw this with the legal defense for Kilmar. We've seen this in any number of incidents where, you know, elected officials and others have gotten arrested for, you know, I don't know. So this is, you know, allegedly slugging an ICE agent as much as we may want to. Okay, that wasn't recorded, was it? So yeah, you know, we protect us, we defend us, and so we you know, if first sign of trouble, we need to remember we have friends everywhere, as they say on Amdor.
I guess I'm next. I'm Jermaine Light. I'm from Vermilion County near Danville. Hi, Ed.
Hi! It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see all of us here together. And so I want to say something. Can I say something real quick that doesn't have anything to do with my questions? Is that all right? Just real quick. I just want to say that we've had some small rallies in Danville, and I'm really proud of how the police have worked with us. And I think making friends with them and asking them for help with de-escalation tactics and things like that has really helped with that. And they were there for us, and we were afraid because it's a very strong red county, and they made us feel good. And I think that's good for going forward too. Some of them even took the day off to be there with us and help us. And I think some of them are also worried about rights. Well, anyway, but I was. Thank you all for being here. But Cate, my questions were for you, and I'm so happy to see that you were included in this. And I've been an environmental activist for a long time, and involved with some things. So I have some concerns, and I know that the immigrant thing is of, utmost importance and our own rights and all that, but the environment is more of a down the road thing, and sometimes it gets pushed down the road because we have these other emergencies come up that we have to give our attention to. But meanwhile, the Trump administration is trying to hurt our environment, and I'm proud of Illinois for standing up to that as much as we can. But we're still concerned about the coal ash removal that the Environment Council helped with, and that's been taking such a long time, even though the bill was passed in 2019 and Pritzker signed it, and it's just taken forever. And so we would love to see some results with that. And we also have new concerns about carbon dioxide pipelines, and those really should be stopped. And there's a lot of bad things about those. And then another thing too is that we've found in being an activist for all of this stuff, we have found the Illinois Department of Natural Resources to be very uncooperative in a lot of our endeavors, sometimes cooperative, but only what they had to do. And they're not doing a very good job with protecting pristine ecosystems. We have another issue in Vermilion County concerning that. And they're not even following their own policies, not protecting lands that they should be finding out what's on that land, getting biologists to work with them, and then deciding what to do with that land. But then they're putting the cart before the horse a lot of times in trying to please organizations that want to use that land for their own purposes. So I can give you examples, but anyway, we want to work with you, but we don't completely know how to do that. And of course, Prairie Rivers, we work with Prairie Rivers and Network and Sierra Club a lot, and Audubon as well.
Yeah, shout out to them.
Is there anything else we can do to work with you? We would like to.
That's a good question. First, I want to say this. I want to go back to your original point of feeling like environmental protections or environmental provisions are put on the back burner. I agree with you. But I want to say this is that it shouldn't be an either or when it comes to this. It should be a comma and. And so that is something that I know my organization, IEC, we are working to make sure that we are not listing in order of importance different things that is happening in this administration, because all of them are important and all of them are equally important. And I do think sometimes when we are advocating for these policies, sometimes we are told, well, that's not a priority right now, right? But my response is, okay, well, it's a priority for your community and the people that you represent. So I think to that extent, yes, we have seen where civil rights or, judiciary issues are oftentimes taking more of the spotlight, but that doesn't mean that environmental impacts are not, affecting our communities. That doesn't mean that people are still dying of lung cancer. That doesn't mean that people still don't have access to clean drinking water. So I think I would challenge you all to continuously hold us accountable, and also don't accept this isn't high on the radar, so we can't talk about it right now. That's false. Secondly, to your question about what you can do, I think connecting, and going back to my point about community building, because it's really important, my colleagues have said up here, is if we don't know about it, it's hard for us to advocate for you. But that's also the reason that IEC and other organizations exist, is because we have 130 member affiliates. You actually listed all 3 of our member affiliates that we work with. So Prairie Rivers, for example, Andrew, we connect all the time. He comes to me and he tells me hey, this is what's going on, or hey, there's a committee hearing today, can you testify, things of that sort. So I think it's about, one, knowledge and educating us. I'm sure some of you probably didn't even know IEC existed before I told you. So it's things like that. Working, Google, one, but also working with people that are on the ground that can, seriously have the resources to help you. And a little bit about me that I don't mind sharing with this group is I worked in the federal government. I worked for an actual Illinois congressional member of Congress. I won't say their name, but I have that expertise and I have that legislative process. I have those connections. So utilize me, utilize your resources, right? But I would just round that up to say, we can't do or we can't fix what we don't know about. And that is accountability on all of us. That's not just, oh, I'm going to leave it up to Congress because they should know about this, right? Or I'm upset because so-and-so state lawmaker, we've been fighting for this and they don't know about it, or we've been pushing for this legislation and nothing has happened. Well, as a citizen, as a constituent of Illinois, you have the right to contact your lawmaker and say, hey, this issue is happening in my community. If you don't get a response, keep pinging them, because I guarantee you eventually they're going to get tired. Eventually they're going to respond to you. Trust me, it happens. So I would say first, fix the unknown, and that unknown is, what do they not know, right? Or how can I educate them, right? But secondly, you have to activate. You have to be your own activist, right? No one is going to do it for you, especially in these times. I'm sorry, you have to be your biggest own advocate. And then also take that mindset of it's a comma and, right? Just because you feel like something is getting more attention in the spotlight, that doesn't mean your priorities aren't just as important, as equally important, because they are all affecting us at the same time. Because guess what? Climate change is real. So while we're talking about all these other policies, we're on fire. So, it's all equally important, but understanding that we have to educate each other, we have to do it in a respectful way, of course, but we have to bring light to the issues that we don't know about.
Thank you. We're going to bring up Rebecca now, and I think we're going to end with Candace. For everyone else that had questions, we will follow up with you with the answers to those questions. This is an ongoing relationship, so we will definitely follow up with you on those questions. So if Candace can come, and Rebecca.
Hello. I'm Rebecca. I'm from Wheaton. Shout out to my DuPage County people. Thank you for being here. I'm very honored to be among so many people that are doing great work, and the panelists included. You guys are doing great, wonderful work. So I'll try and phrase my question pretty succinctly, and I hope the answer is no. But it comes from a place of wanting to ground us all in a common reality, because misinformation hurts everybody, even if we're the ones that are spreading it and want to believe it. I've been hearing recently some theories in our circles about who might be under those masks doing the immigration raids. And I'm curious if you as professionals are hearing any or seeing any evidence about people that are not actually government employees posing as ICE, such as I've heard Proud Boys or January 6ers. And I just want to put that theory to bed if there's no evidence to it. So, thank you.
Okay. I've heard those rumors myself. I am not aware of any substantiation for that. That said, I think we're all kind of on tenterhooks given the incident in Minnesota a weekend ago. So I think unfortunately, there is cause for concern. I'm aware of at least one incident actually involving a march that we organized through downtown Chicago, where a person was arrested, not right at the march, but at the outskirts of the march for impersonating a police officer. So it's out there. Again, I can't, I'm not aware of any incidents of people impersonating immigration officers, but that said, now that any federal agent essentially can engage in immigration enforcement, we ourselves don't know who is behind those kerchiefs or masks or what have you. They shouldn't be able to, but yeah. They're permitted to. Yeah, ICE is allowing, if not outright directing them to, and I think that's going to be a matter for congressional oversight.
there are both federal statutes as well as regulations in every agency about officers needing to identify themselves unless they're in very specific circumstances undercover. That does not mean heavily armed masked men roaming around the streets of a major city without any sort of identification. And I agree with Fred. I think this is a matter for congressional oversight, and I think there'll be other challenges to this down the road.
I'm Candace Davis with Indivisible Evanston. My question is, in terms of Trump-proofing Illinois, is there an opportunity to amend the Illinois Constitution to add like the right to abortion to make it harder to change if we turn red again?
So that avenue always exists. It is an intensive, heavy, resourced, draining activity. Right now, and I'm about to offend my friends at the Guttmacher Institute, but I will, Illinois has the most protections in place in any state in the country for reproductive health care and access to reproductive health care. So I think the question is, is that the priority in terms of what we do, or are there other states and other places where those resources might go, and or other things which are a higher priority given the makeup, the nature of what we're seeing in Illinois? And so, I think that's the question. As you may know, there was a sort of a debate among organizations about doing something a year or so ago, and ultimately, I think correctly, but I understand this is not universal, and there are people who disagree, that expending, multiple millions of dollars on a campaign in Illinois to change our Constitution when the statute in the Reproductive Health Act that we adopted in 2019 is as far-reaching as anything that could be other than a constitutional amendment, I just don't think is a wise use of resources.
I mean, I hear that. I just wish Obama had done something when he could.
Understood?
All right, we want to thank our panelists. We want to thank Ed, thank Fred, and thank Cate. As I mentioned, this is going to be an ongoing relationship, so we're going to have them back for virtual panels, and we're definitely going to be talking with them about how we can work with them on advocacy. So we will be in touch soon. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for making the drive. I know it was a big drive for you all back and forth. We appreciate it.